All right, first of all, last day of session, we hope, sine die, which I'm glad that we're finally here. First of all, I just want to thank the journalists. I think you all do so much to try to help people understand what we're doing up here and what's going on. And it's very difficult for the public to understand this building and the decisions we're making, the things that are moving, and the way that you all put that information out in a timely and understandable fashion is very appreciated. Whether or not I like how I'm quoted, I'm always glad that you all are doing the work and trying to make that obvious, because people need to know what their government's doing. And we make this process too obscure. It needs to be more transparent, and so I appreciate you very much. I wanted to just talk about a few hits and misses from the session, some of my highlights and lowlights, and then glad to talk about whatever. Hits, I wanted to talk specifically about a couple of pieces of legislation. When it comes to public education, you know, our first priority is a great public schools for all kids. We did not see the kind of big movement we want to see, but we were able to pass a couple of very specific bipartisan measures by our members. So extending maternity leave by Senator Mark Mann, that was a bipartisan measure that adds paid sick leave to the end of maternity leave, which I think is a big deal for people who are trying to keep their baby safe when they're coming back to work. And I was really pleased that Senator Hicks's micro-credentialing for dyslexia specialist went through, and I think that's a way we can give those educators who want to learn more about reading and teaching kids with learning needs. I'm really proud of that bill. When it comes to long, healthy lives, I just want to specifically comment on the mental health competency restoration settlement. I mean, I know we're not really underway yet, and we need to be underway, but I'm just glad that we took the steps rather than continuing that lawsuit to go ahead and try to make the steps to do better in that area. And then I'm really thrilled with Senator Dossett had a bill that went through that was specifically about access to medication and getting longer prescriptions for birth control, and I think that was really meaningful. She's worked on that hard, and of course it had to be bipartisan, and she had to overcome a lot of obstacles to get that through. But I think it's good for people to be able to access multi-month prescriptions instead of having to go every month. So those are some hits. On the misses side, I think we had big ones around education. I mean, one of the biggest being not taking action on the social studies standards. I think we're going to see fallout on that for years, and we're very disappointed with those standards and what they're going to bring to kids, and that it's not factual. And that we didn't take the action we could have as a legislature. And then public school funding. I mean, for us to put very little into the formula and then expect school districts to do an extra day, not give teachers the raises except for the steps, but we actually didn't even fund those things. I think we're putting schools in a horrible position where they're trying to, again, do more with less. We did nothing to address the teacher shortage, and we really didn't take action on even the really great bipartisan ideas that had come forward on the teacher shortage. I just want to comment on prosperity. We saw nothing related to minimum wage except for a bill specifically to undermine tipped workers. And so I think you see there's a state question looming, and the legislature chose not to act. I think we could have come up with a proposal and could have let the public decide if they liked what the legislature had brought forward or the state question, but instead we decided not to act. So I know that we need to increase wages and that there's got to be a reasonable way to do that. And it looks like the state question is going to be the way that we decide. I guess they have one more year. And then I was disappointed that all housing measures died. We didn't have any supply side housing things go through. Eviction got vetoed. So really we did nothing around housing affordability or the crisis we're seeing in terms of people being able to access affordable housing. And then of course, undermining voters' power through the initiative petitions, one of our biggest misses of the year. And we see that as just a huge problem for voters being able to speak up on the things that matter the most to them. So those are some of our biggest hits and misses. What do you all want to talk about?
What did you make of the governor not signing the main budget bill, just letting that go into effect? Do you feel like that's kind of him not doing his job when he's not signing these bills?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the governor's been choosing not to sign a lot of bills. I mean, I think the majority have not been signed, and I think that's a change for him, and I just don't know if he's not wanting to take responsibility for the decisions being made. I mean, I'm glad it went into law. Same with the Senate Joint Resolution on the Board of Education rules. I mean, I was fascinated that after him saying that he cared a lot about not gathering immigration information about children, he didn't sign that measure. So he left it up to the legislature. So I mean, in that way, I'm glad, like the legislature's taking ownership of those things. But I do think it's a little odd how few things he's signing.
The breast cancer screening just got overridden in the House. What's your thoughts on the Senate? How do y'all feel? Because it still hasn't been.
I think the Senate will overwhelmingly support that mammography bill. And what I'm hearing is most women are signing on as co-authors. because we want to make a statement that it matters and that women's health matters.
Regarding just the number of vetoes we saw this session and the number of overrides we've already seen today, just kind of what do you make of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting process where you might have a bill where it went through unanimously or almost unanimously in the House and Senate, which are so many people vetting those bills, and then to have the governor veto it it's a strange thing in our democracy that he gets full veto power there. And so I think when it's valuable policy that's been well vetted and thought through, it makes sense for us to override. And that's been, this whole week has been discussing overrides and which things we really want to throw our support behind and trying to make sure that good things are getting overridden,
You mentioned good things being overridden, but like right now, my number may be off, but it's around about 44 overrides so far today. And the governor had a video out just about lunch that he said about 60 something. I mean,
Is that right?
What was the number?
68.
Is it 68 now?
So we're
Okay.
only about 24 away, most of them through though. I mean, what do you think about the
Yeah,
efforts of
it's
the
interesting. I think when it comes down to overriding, people take it pretty seriously in the legislature. It's not like we're flippant about overriding. I think that people don't want to override every veto because they want to keep that relationship with the governor and they respect his decision making. But it's interesting how few we're seeing. My feeling is that shows how few bills are actually urgent. Because if we passed it and it got vetoed and we're going to leave it sitting there, maybe that wasn't urgent or there wasn't the political will. I know with my eviction bill, I knew I didn't have the support to make it happen. But I think for some of the bills, it's just not as urgent as they might have presented it when they first brought it around.
What was the worst bill of the session?
Worst? Oh, that's hard for me, Barbara. I'm going to say the tax cut. What we see is a continued out of balance tax code that really, again, benefiting the wealthy. We have low income folks paying more, middle income folks paying more of their income on property taxes, sales taxes. And so we're going to cut income tax, which really primarily benefits rich folks. And then it's going to undermine our options as a state. We have yet to see, we're balancing the budget on our savings accounts. And I think we've seen that as a really dangerous path in the past. But especially we didn't actually reform the tax code at all. Yeah.
On that tax code, Governor did sign it. It is set to become law. There are a bunch of vetoes going on. There are still some budget bills that haven't been signed, some appropriations to some pretty major agencies. Is that likely to be affected at all by the vetoes? And is there a give and take happening?
I mean, I know the pro tem and the speaker are meeting all day long, and they've met with the governor multiple times. So I'm not privy to all that. The pro tem has been very upfront with me about what's coming up. So I do feel like I'm getting information before we hit the floor, but I'm not in those rooms. Yeah.
There's an ethics training bill that State vetoed
Yes.
this morning. AG came out almost immediately with a thing. That got overridden. 0 people said nay to it. in the
Interesting.
House.
Yeah.
So have you heard of the Senate side, what they think of that bill?
I think, so that anti-corruption bill, I think it passed our side overwhelmingly. It's specifically about agency directors, agency officers, and making sure state employees don't have conflicts of interest to earn money on the side or make deals with their friends. And I think that's incredibly important. The public don't trust government, and we need to make sure we're putting in place those trainings and efforts. My big thing was that we need to include elected officials because we have 0 required ethics training as elected officials, but we require all kinds of other professions to have continuing education, ethics training. Attorneys, I think, have to have multiple hours a year. To me, that's something we should do as well. And it's something that we need to refresh ourselves on because it's not like everything is black and white. You have to constantly look for conflicts of interest and potential problems there. So to me, it's a really important bill. So I hope we're taking it up this afternoon.
Yesterday, I did a story about the Freedom Caucus and how they're pushing back against some bills and stuff. And for pretty much the entire session, we've seen sometimes that there is a line between the other side of the aisle and Republicans. Have you been able to talk with not only leadership but that group of Republicans like Senator Jett and Senator Devers about what could be in store for today and like this, because there may be some overrides that come over to the Senate and may not make it through.
Yeah, so when it comes to the Freedom Caucus, I mean, we talk to them often. We're trying to keep in communication, get information all the time, because we want to know when they're going to if we can find out in advance when they're going to oppose something, because that helps us know what our position is. When they oppose something, we are in a position of deciding, right? So there were several overrides this morning that we were the deciding votes on. And so we had very serious conversations about things that we want all of us to throw in on. Are these priority issues for us, or are we going to let something go if it's not a top priority issue? So those conversations have been happening all week. And I would say among their caucus, us across the aisle, all around, yeah.
One comment the governor made in his video about the veto overrides is that the reason that his will basically is being overturned so easily and so swiftly is because not enough people got primaried out on the Republican side. I wonder what you think of that statement from the governor, that basically people should make sure to vote more right and get the liberal Republicans out.
I think we're really at a crucial place where more people need to vote. And more people need to be aware of their elected officials. Should people hold us accountable for our votes? Absolutely. I'm glad to train anyone how to look up votes, because I think a lot of times our constituents don't know how to see how we're voting, or they might know their elected official and think they're okay as a person, but they don't even know how they vote. So to me, accountability is really important. But that implication is wild. And I'm fascinated I don't know what strategy he's playing with there, because he terms out in 18 months, and so I don't know what his strategy is, but I know that we'll be looking at elections. We'll be doing our hardest to recruit candidates and try to get out there early for next year's elections, and so I probably won't be worrying about the Republican primaries that much.
I will say, he did say that he'd be reminding voters in 2026 that they should be voting in the primary.
Boy, I hope he reminds voters about some of these votes. I think that would be helpful, yeah.
Well, a little bit more of a fun question here. How has the Thunder success helped the atmosphere at the Capitol and maybe just kind of the spirit of Oklahoma in general?
Oh, that's great. We get to talk Thunder. I think the Thunder winning is such a great experience for all of us. We need community pride. There's plenty of areas where we have a lot of work to do, and to get to actually directly win something is a blast. And I've seen a lot of camaraderie around supporting the basketball team. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just noticed on the morning, especially during the playoffs, the morning after they win, everyone's in a good mood.
Oh,
the
that's
morning after they lose, it's like a gloom.
Interesting. I haven't noticed that, but it is much better than Sooners versus Cowboys, because that always gets ugly on the Senate floor.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a finals prediction?
I think we can all agree on the Thunder should take it in. What do you think, 5? Let's go 5.
4.
I like 5 because then, they get to come back and win it here, because we want them home to win it. I'm just so proud. Like, the shots in the last few weeks, the shots of the city have made me so proud, because I've been in this community a long time and was very involved with public art before I got here. And so just some of the shots where they're showing these amazing projects we've done that have been public-private partnerships, these MAPS projects. You see public art, some of which was publicly funded, some that was privately funded. All these things that make our community look so great on these shots are things that have taken a long time and a lot of advocacy to get there. And so I get pretty happy about that. Yeah.
I'm not so fun question.
Please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know this is hard to ask because it hasn't happened yet, so I'll just be very direct.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Allie Friesen is in a place where she is running the department, or do you feel like it's time for her to go?
I have real big concerns. As I've said before, I think trust is very broken between her and the health providers, and I don't see how we rebuild that, because the communication's been so bad, and there's been misrepresentations and broken contracts. And so to me, rebuilding our system, much less keeping things rolling, is not going to happen with her in leadership right now. Clearly, Republicans will lead if anything's going to change, but I think we've seen the hiring practices are not strong. And that's one of our biggest keys in state agencies, is making sure we have competent people that can do the work. And I think if we can't do the basics, we can't do the work. Anything else, y'all? There's going to be so many more surprises this afternoon. Who knows, right?
Last
Yeah.
question, for me at least, is the interim. What are some things that the Senate, other lawmakers need to look into and kind of come back, focus on?
Well, I know the Senate Democrats are going to be working really hard on health-related issues. I'll work hard on mental health and substance use. Hopefully can advocate for some improvements to the system, since we had all these breakdowns this year. I do know I'll keep working on housing. I mean, we have to get back to it and figure out what, as a state, we can do to improve housing situations across the state. And I know that we will be working on prosperity-related things. What are those economic development, especially small business? One of the real highlights we want to make is on how we can support small business in a meaningful way. And make sure that we're not just focusing on corporations all the time. So, I mean, we'll be looking at interim study topics, trying to meet with groups. We've been doing town halls across the state in different communities and gathering that information. So I hope we can really use that feedback to drive what we're talking about up here too.